Yeah.
In this episode, we'll be taking our soft-spoken, coordination-challenged,
5-second pause,
socially awkward autistic kid and rushing him away to a completely foreign location, far away from everything he knows, where he'll then be submerged 30 to 50 feet below the ocean, trapped and dangling in a cage, waiting to be discovered by one of this planet's most large, dangerous, and feared creatures. All of this to help bring him out of his shell. Sounds a bit crazy when you put it like that. Well, in this extreme life experiment, that's exactly what we did. Why, you ask? Because he begged us to. But more importantly, did it work? Well, keep watching and you can make that call for yourself. Through our videos, you've probably seen us experimenting with all sorts of teaching methods. Immersive, real-world experiences designed to build our kids' critical thinking and life skills by leaning deep into their special interests. This particular approach, though, is the most extreme one we have in our toolbox. We've been patiently preparing Connor for something like this for a long time. Just waiting for the right opportunity to pull the trigger.
Yeah, good.
At its core, this technique is simple but intense. You take the child's most passionate special interest and feed it to them, full bore, both barrels, for days. Now, going full in on something like this is going to only work for a subset of neurodiverse kids. If you or that special someone is one of these, you'll already know it. For this kind of immersion to take off, the timing needs to be perfect. The subject needs to hit the ground running. Connor had just wrapped up a solid week of intense diving.
But it's like a real haunted mansion where you could actually die.
Engaging with all manner of incredible underwater creatures. Here you can see him trying to run an experiment with an octopus, only to have it derailed by this determined sheep crab that wanders straight through the shot. We got incredibly lucky on this particular trip, in that we had a very unexpected encounter.
Imagine, if you will, a world that is between nightmare and dream. A world of sharks.
Critically endangered snapper sharks.
Giant fish.
A large school of them.
8 feet long and 500 pounds, and sharks that appear only once in 3 years.
Connor had the honor of spending 3 days filming and studying these amazing creatures. So when we got word that 2 spots had just opened up on this great white shark excursion, it felt like the stars had aligned. Connor was already primed. He was already buzzing with shark energy. It was finally the perfect time to try out what we're calling our full-on extreme immersion technique.
Right there, behind that arm.
Sharks have definitely been a long-standing and...
Oh, I see it. A shark.
Two! One more! There's one more! There's another one! 2, 3!
infatuation.
Yeah, look at those little sharks.
We see the sharks! What?
Whoa, just scared them away by moving quickly.
Yeah, actually I think it was the camera.
Being one of the world's most highly misunderstood and highly feared creatures of all time puts them square into Connor's reasons for loving them so much.
I remember that dive. When those creatures came out of seemingly the ether, what was more of a surprise to me was the fact that they were just as shocked by my presence as I was by theirs.
And right at the very tip top of his list, the great white shark. The core of this extreme learning technique starts by stripping away all familiar comforts and routines. This triggers heightened awareness and opens the mind to new possibilities.
We are going to face our fears. We're jumping off at how deep?
100 feet.
140.
Connor actually thrives on uncertainty, so for him, it's a good fit.
I can do it!
I can do it.
1, 2, 3. Ah!
At the start of the trip, everything that made me comfortable was systematically stripped away. We hauled all of our heavy gear on foot through a chaotic border crossing into Mexico, a place where everything I learned to take for granted had practically no longer existed. We got crammed into vans like sardines, and then rushed through a rather intrusive COVID test. I remember there was a quick group before photo just to see who was missing later. Some very minimal safety training. Then we boarded the waiting boat at nightfall, engines already running. As we approached the ship, I heard the sound of a chainsaw. I heard my dad whispering something about a Al Pacino movie with a horrible chainsaw scene. And what I saw next was a horrible chainsaw scene. A large tuna. Apparently, it was being prepared as bait for what was to come. Well, this was certainly more than I was already expecting. Normally, a scene like that would bring me to instant tears.
Worst day I've ever had. Yeah, I just want to leave. I just want them to leave.
So I held back my emotions and reminded myself that every creature needs to live. Once boarded, we motored out of this megapolis harbor. At this point, nothing seemed real to me. We motored all nights, through darkness, the endless sound of waves, in complete harmony with mechanical noises of the motor, what seemed like an impossible rhapsody in our modern world. Guadalupe Island is amazingly remote. About 150 miles off the coast of Mexico, comprised of mostly, hopefully, dormant volcanoes. Its jagged, sharp, vertical cliffs suggest its uninhabitable nature. In 2005, Guadalupe and its surrounding inlets were declared a biosphere reserve, partly because it has its own biosphere, with its own ecosystem. During the majority of our stay, this ominous cloud enfolded the entire island. It's literally a real-world skull island. The sharks are drawn here for a reason, away from the dangers of human life. These shores are home to vast colonies of sea lions and other marine life, like the giant elephant seal colonies, some of which we even mistook for large sunken boats. Nurseries of curious, playful pups enjoy lounging in the shallows here, so long as they do not stray too deep. The deep belongs to these guys. In many parting prayers and wishes go out to those who stray into their domain. We spotted what we believed were remnants of one who did, and judging by the bite on this poor fellow's neck, he likely forgot this unspoken rule.
The next step in this process is to replace all daily routines with new rituals. Rituals aimed at the study and worship of that one all-encompassing shared passion. For the next 4 days, Connor exists within a reality that revolves around sharks. Every conversation, every lesson,
Before we had Megalodon, there was a 50.
every picture, every person, yep, even the children on the ship, all about that shared common passion. Sharing concentrated time with fellow fanatics is a key part of this whole methodology.
That morning, my father and I watched as the cages were being prepared for us. I could not help but be reminded of the risks that we were taking and what we were about to embark on. If something were to go wrong in those cages, we were way out in the middle of nowhere, with likely nobody to come. Perhaps another dive boat? Perhaps a passing ship? Perhaps not.
Gotta interject here for a moment. The kiddo's mom and I actually never go on these adventures willy-nilly. We actually do look very hard into them beforehand, trying to identify the risks and steps that we can take to minimize these risks. However, despite these investigative efforts on our part, there can be times where something is overlooked or missed, and they tend to reveal themselves during the trip rather than prior. This was one of those times. We were about to be reminded of the inherent risks of being out here in this place with these truly powerful creatures.
At that morning's breakfast, we befriended a seasoned shark wrangler who had been with the operation for many years. He was even part of the original Sea Shepherd team.
Yeah. Probably a little difficult to free dive around here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like
I
wouldn't
would
even
love to freedive with a great white shark. That is for sure. Of course.
I think I would too if it wasn't so if there wasn't any chum in the water.
Right?
Well, the topic of freediving seemed to spark a less than fond memory. An event, to be precise. But to give this story proper weight, we need to go back to the previous night, while we were boarding. You see, this isn't really a tale about flesh. Do you hear that? The sound of the chainsaw ripping through flesh. These immense chunks of tuna flesh are what really drive the entire great white shark cage diving experience. White sharks have some of the most accurate scent detectors in the entire world, capable of picking up a single drop of blood from miles away. The scent of the flesh, when cast into the water, draws in sharks from all around the island. Originally, they would actually chum the water with gallons of blood and flesh to draw the sharks in. But this was found rather dangerously overkill and can result in dangerous feeding frenzies, where injuries for both human and shark kind were somewhat common. Shark wranglers have now figured out that a single chunk of flesh is more than enough to entice these sharks in. Apparently, up until about 2 years ago, it was common practice that these divers would actually bring the flesh chunks into the cage with them. So once a shark came close enough, the flesh thrower on the platform would pull their bait in, resulting in a very hungry and often determined shark attempting to work out how to get that other piece of flesh on the other side of the cage. The dive company relied heavily on overbuilt cages as the separator between man and beast. This more personalized approach to enticing these sharks resulted in some of the best shark selfies of all time, many of which can still be seen spattered throughout the walls of dive shops throughout the world. But, unknown at that time, these cages did in fact present a flaw. A flaw one very clever and very determined great white had been studying for quite some time. And 2 years back, that very shark committed herself to exploiting that flaw. In the roof entry hatch, she made a lunging dive. She became immediately wedged, with the divers now trapped just beneath her in the cage.
Now, to better understand the severity of what this meant to all those involved, we need to take a moment to better understand more about how these cage dives work. These cage dives are built on time-proven methods developed at the very onset of scuba diving. The enforced cages are lowered by giant cranes suspended 30 to 40 feet below the ship. The diver's lifeline, an air pump at the surface, feeds all divers beneath through a single air hose leading down to each cage. When the shark made its lunge for the bait, it also severed this airline. You'll also notice the divers wear no fins. They're also held to the floor of the cage using these very heavy suspender-style weight belts. Long story short, these divers had to somehow find the backup air supply amidst the thrashing teeth and bubbles and blood, find the side escape hatch, get back up to the surface while remembering to remove their very heavy weight belts so as not to plummet the 300 feet to the bottom. Oh, and remembering to breathe out continuously while surfacing so as not to rupture their lungs, amidst circling great white sharks in bloodied water. Once the brave crew had the cage divers back on the surface, they actually free dove back down and worked tirelessly for many minutes to eventually work the shark free. It's also worth mentioning that none of the circling white sharks ever gave any sign of aggression.
Now, my limits were being tested.
Now, my limits as a parent were being tested.
It was my father and I's turn to go into the cage, and as we were preparing for the experience, visions
Of the worst case scenarios.
kept popping up in my mind. But I kept reminding myself that these cages had been completely redesigned. We had spent all morning practicing safety protocols.
Extensive safety protocols.
It was near cult-like. I felt increasingly more safe.
I was able to mostly shake off my concerns and keep my focus where it needed to be.
I entered the cage for the first time. Slowly, cautious, and with intent. All my brain bits were operating at full capacity and ready to face whatever awaited us.